It hardly seems that another week goes by without some car manufacturer issuing a safety recall, bringing millions of vehicles back in to fix an inherent problem or issue. Is this a bad thing? Have things changed in the automotive industry over the years? And why do we get these recalls? And should we ignore them if we get a recall notice on our car? Firstly, let's just address the supply situation in the car manufacturing industry. Years ago, car manufacturers tended to make a lot of stuff in-house. A Toyota car, for example, would have Toyota bits inside it. Nowadays, though, the manufacturing of items is outsourced, and that's not surprising because cars are far more complex than they ever used to be. They have safety devices like airbags, we'll be mentioning those later, and various different electronic features, electronic devices inside them. And these are sourced by various manufacturing plants who use varying qualities of manufacturing materials, source materials, and it's quite common for a bad batch to sneak out. Nowadays, though, this bad batch doesn't affect just one manufacturer because multiple manufacturers often use the same supplier, and issues tend to balloon and become major problems. Back in 1968, we're going back to the dark ages of the car industry really, Ford had a notorious Pinto issue. The fuel tank could explode in certain circumstances. They sat down and did a calculation, and the cost to fix this fault would be 121 million US dollars. The accountants then sat down and they calculated the cost of paying compensation to victims who were killed or seriously injured because of this fuel tank fault, and they estimated that to be 50 million US dollars. Guess what they did? They ignored the problem. It was cheaper to pay out for the compensation and deal with that rather than address this issue that was putting people's lives at risk. Their reputation took a major hit because of that. It's become one of those notorious cases in history. But they're not the only company. General Motors in 2005 had a fault on the ignition switch, and it was a relatively cheap part to fix, about 57 cents it's been estimated at. But the overall cost and hassle of bringing all these vehicles in to have this fix applied was again put far in excess of the cost of compensation. The cost of paying compensation was considered more cost effective, and they would rather pay for compensation for injuries and accidents and problems that came about as a result of this switch problem. In 2009, 2010, Toyota had an issue with unintended acceleration, and initially they tried to explain this away as being the car mat's fault. The car mats were too thick and were getting caught, and that was causing this acceleration problem. But after much investigation, the Toyota Motor Company were levied with a fantastically high fine of 1.2 billion US dollars because they had misled both regulators and families about this issue, and because of that cover-up, they were really seriously sanctioned with this massive fine. They're not isolated cases, so don't think that these are the only manufacturers that have made these appalling decisions in the past, because notoriously it happened quite a lot. Things have certainly moved on though. With the advent of social media, being online, forums, even YouTube itself, it's very easy to establish whether a fault is just a unique thing common to us and our car, or whether there is a pattern of this fault occurring on many different vehicles. And if a pattern is established, the reputation of the car maker is on the line. They will lose credibility and trust if they don't address this issue. So there's a lot more pressure on manufacturers now to address these faults. And we've seen massive recall notices going out at fantastically high costs to manufacturers to address safety concerns. We did mention a problem with airbags. Takata, a large company that make airbags, had a batch of airbags that were prone to explode and injure the occupants of a car. Now, that's not an ideal situation to have, and these airbags were in millions of cars from many different manufacturers. As soon as this fault was established and verified, thankfully it was caught in the rigorous safety testing. Over 100 million cars have been recalled to have that fault fixed and addressed. Sadly though, in the US, there were about 28 deaths attributable to this airbag fault. But thankfully, many more lives have been saved because of the prompt action of the manufacturers and the fact that they were willing to issue recall notices and bring these cars in for a fix. There's often weird problems. Hyundai, Kia, they had an issue with their ABS brake system, which would leak, cause a short, and that short circuit would cause a fire in the engine bay. They issued a park outside notice to 3.3 million vehicles while they were assessing this problem. And thankfully it was an easy fix. They just needed to fit a fuse that would blow before this fire could start in the engine bay. And that addressed the safety concerns and the problem. They rolled that fix out to their customers. A lot of faults now are caused by software. Cars are very complex now. The software controlling the car is not just controlling the radio, it's controlling the navigation, all the aspects of the car. Even in some cases, the car's air conditioning is all part of the car's computer system. So you can imagine with such complex systems, it's very easy for faults to creep in, bugs that only happen under a very unique set of circumstances. And when these are identified, a fix is rolled out. And in some cases, the over-the-air fixes go out to cars automatically. In other cases, you have to take your car into a dealership and have the software update applied. But it's always in our interest to get these fixes sorted as soon as they are flagged up, because they do become potential safety issues. And I know also that Chrysler, Stellantis and Volvo both had problems with their reversing camera. I remember days gone by when we reversed a car, we used to look over our shoulder to see if anything was behind. But I guess cars are getting bigger, they're higher off the ground, the rearward visibility is reduced compared to what it was in those early little cars that we used to drive. So the camera has effectively become an essential safety item, and the fact that that was failing when reverse was engaged was a potential safety problem and safety issue. So those manufacturers recalled their cars and fixed that very simple problem that could have caused major injuries or accidents had it not been addressed. As recently as 2024, Honda recalled 1.69 million vehicles because of a steering defect. It was a simple little worm gear in the steering column that wasn't manufactured properly and it would fail. A fix was rolled out. Dealers implemented a very simple fix involving a spring and simple grease that was applied to just prevent this problem from happening. But they were very quick to react and roll out that fix. So regulators are certainly taking an interest in safety issues. The media has also made it very easy to identify manufacturers that are shirking their safety responsibility. And if we ever do have a recall notice issued on a car, don't ignore it. Make sure that that is addressed. And when we're buying a car, it's always good to just check if there were any recall notices or hot fixes that were issued to our car and just make sure that they've been applied, because we're just putting ourselves and our family at risk if we don't do that. It's really comforting to see how the industry has moved on over the years, how corporate responsibility has moved away from the bottom line, profit, and they're now thinking about safety because they're under so much pressure from their customers, from regulators, and from the media in general. If you found this video interesting, please boot the like button. That does help us to get out there. If you could subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so, that also tells the algorithm that this channel's worth recommending to other people. And I've lined up this video in this playlist that you should find really interesting. Thanks for watching. See you in these next videos.